Okay, again, good afternoon, everyone, and looks like we've gained quite a few attendees on the list, so we are going to start with our GP 2013 webinar. Again, my name is Lisa Smith, and Tammy Johnson is going to be presenting today, and with that, I'm going to hand it over to Tammy. Oh, one quick thing, if we do have questions, we've got a lot of content to cover today. So we are going to take questions over to the right. You can type a question in because everyone is in listen-only mode. You can type a question. We will try to get to those questions if time does allow for that. If not, Tammy and I will email at the end to everyone what the questions were and what the answers are to those as well if time doesn't allow. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Tammy and we can get started.
Great. Thanks, Lisa. I'm going to say good morning because it's morning where I am. And welcome to our webinar, What's New in Dynamics GP 2013. My name is Tammy Johnson, by the way, and the focus of our webinar is going to be really system, and then financials and distribution. We do have some additional webinars coming up with more detail on fixed assets. We also have an HR and payroll webinar coming up for GP 2013. So just in the interest of time, we kind of had to condense it down into the core financials and distribution. So I'm going to start here, if I can get this to move. We're going to start with system and home page. And I'm not going to go through each of these in detail on the slide, just to show you that we do have quite a bit of change in the system manager and in the home page area. So I'm just going to move right over into, if I can get my, hold on just a second. There we go. Get into GP 2013. The first thing I want to mention is that all of the content that I'm going to be presenting today came right from the Help and What's New section of Help inside of Dynamics GP 2013. So you can see all of the different functional areas and any changes and enhancements that have been made in those areas are detailed within Help. So some of the big changes in the home page, for me, I think it's become much more functional. And you notice now instead of having metrics, we've got Business Analyzer embedded right inside of our home page. We've also got a lot of enhanced customization capabilities with the home page. First of all, we can move things around where we couldn't do that before. We had to, do some other things in order to get things to move around. We actually had to go in and pick what we wanted, where we wanted it to be. You can also see that you've got the option of having different columns. How many columns do you want in your layout, as well as this column stack, and that's really handy for situations where you want to focus on a particular area. So for example, if I wanted to if I spend a lot of time in my reminders that this is where I do most of my navigation, I can actually just expand that out, and you can see then everything kind of stacks at the bottom because that's the way I had my settings configured. So it's pretty easy to personalize this now. As well, you'll see when I'm going to go into the financial area page here for just a second, that same stack and ability to move things around is available in the area pages as well. And so you can see there's the stack now, and the rest of them are here at the bottom. And you can also even decide that you don't want to have certain things on your screen. Maybe you don't want to have set up on your financial area page, and so you can go ahead and disable that right from the area page. So again, just lots of customization and personalization capabilities. In the interest of time, I've actually added some links here to my navigation pane, but I've put the navigation address in that for you so you can see where I would have gone if I would have gone to the pull-down menus. So the first one here is in system is there's been a change in, or an enhancement really, to the email functionality. In in GP 2013, and that is the ability to password protect any attachments. So if you have a Word document and you don't want users to make changes to that Word document, for example, you're sending an invoice in Word format, you can apply a password. And the system will actually auto-generate a password for you. And if you auto-generate it, then nobody knows the password. Nobody can edit that document. So, or you can have create your own password as well. So a little bit more security there. So I'm gonna show you the next enhancement here, and I'm expecting to hear some applause over the phone on this one. So what I'm doing is I'm generating a trial balance report. And I've done it to the screen, but you could do this just directly to a report as well. When you click print, it asks you what printer you want to send it to. And so that's a big change that's come in GP 2013. I know it's been something we've been looking for a while. So that's a huge enhancement. You can redirect to a different printer if you want to. So another change that's been made, or an enhancement, these are all enhancements, they're not really changes, is if we look at the maintenance cards, so this would be for customers and vendors specifically. If we have a vendor on the screen, we can actually choose what reports we want to print from this print menu. You can have a whole list here. I've just got one assigned, but all of the reports that are available for this particular type of record will be listed here. It takes a minute to pull those in as it's connecting to my SSRS reports as well as my GP report, so you can see everything there. And then when I come over to generate the report, in this case it's an SSRS report that shows the vendor aging. And this is something that's probably in Business Analyzer as well. So you're seeing what might be in Business Analyzer, but it's filtered just for this particular vendor. And there's the results. And then from here, if you have your normal functions, you would be able to drill back in. So just the ability to add some default reports to our maintenance windows. And finally, in the system area, this was a big one for me, and that's the ability to, when you're working with an alternate or a modified reports dictionary, when you make changes to a particular to the access for particular forms, for example, and I'm going to do this right now because I know I have a demo after this where I need to do this, so I get to do it now during the webinar. I can change the access in mass here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to change all of these from using the standard Dynamics GP window to using the project accounting window. So I'm just going to click change all, and you can see it made that change and it jumped for each of those. It'll make the change for me. So a lot faster than the way it had to be done in the past. All right, so those are the system enhancements and the home page that we're going to be taught I wanted to show you today. Let's move on to General Ledger. There's a few things that I want to share with you there. If I can get back to my GP window, there we go. So I'm going to go into the financial area page. We were in here once before when we looked at moving and customizing this. So let's start by looking at a unit account. For those of you who are using unit accounts, you'll notice in GP 2013 we have a new field here, a checkbox that says clear balance during year-end close. So if you have things like, I don't know, revenue or number of deliveries, or I'm thinking like year-to-date or something like that, and you want to clear those during your year-end close process and start all over again at the beginning of the year, you can go ahead and set that by unit account. In our, and actually I moved it out of the way here, so I'm going to move this back up here. In our year-end close, there's been some changes, and we talked about this recently during our year-end close webinar. the way that GP handles inactive accounts, and it's actually changing now with GP 2013. You have the option to maintain inactive accounts, and it can be all inactive accounts or just those with budget amounts. So you might have some preliminary accounts that you've set up that you've applied budgets to. You've marked them as inactive because you don't want anybody to post to them, but you want to maintain them because you're going to open them up at the beginning of the year. So you can make that setting here. As well, you'll see a little status bar here, and so that wish that we always have when we're doing year-end close, we always lean towards Control-Alt-Delete because it looks like it's hanging. This is another way that you can tell that it's really not hanging, that it is processing. So there'll be a status bar that shows up in year-end closing. So let's run back to the home page here. In General Ledger, and actually this is true throughout GP, anytime there's a batch, we have the option. I'm just going to bring up a journal entry here. We have the option to require a batch approval. There we go. And so on each batch, you'll see and I'll show you this. You'll see a checkbox to require batch approval, and then you have to enter in a password. So the way that it works is if we look at a batch, and we can, it can be any of the batches in the general ledger here. Let's see, that's inquiry. Where did there's my transactions. And so you can see this here. You have to record that and mark it as approved in order for it to be posted. Well, there's been an enhancement for transactions now. It'll keep track of those in history, and you can actually access that using Smart List. So I just have a Smart List that I've set up here for batch approvals, and I actually use Smart List Builder for this. And the help actually gives you the list of the tables that are affected, so you can pull those in. But if I go ahead and just run this Smart List, which I did from my navigation pane here, which might be something that you guys aren't familiar with, but you can run Smart List from your navigation pane. Here I can see that SA approved this a couple days ago, and it was journal entry 3691, and I can actually see the details of the transaction as well. So just some additional audit capabilities added to those batch approvals. All right, and the last thing that I want to talk about here inside of General Ledger is some enhancements to the reconcile to GL function. So I think GP10, maybe even before, I'm trying to think, it might have been GP10 that brought us this reconcile to GL function, where it was mostly focused on payables and receivables, and it uses Excel to show you which transactions are matched, which are potentially matched, and then which transactions are unmatched, which I have none, go figure. And it helps you balance to your subsidiary ledger, basically. And so in GP 2013, that's been enhanced now to include a reconciliation for inventory to the GL, as well as reconciling bank reconciliation to the GL. And so it's the same function. You pick your module, any accounts that are affected by that. You might have more than one inventory account. Click Process, and it'll open that up in Excel. So, and actually keep track on the screen here of the difference. And so this is kind of like a journal entry where it's going to keep track of the state here of each of these as you do them. So it keeps track of them in history. So making it a little bit easier for you to reconcile to your subledgers. Okay, so let's see what we have in payables. There's quite a few here in payables. And let's see here. The first one, I'm going to go into my payables area page. The first one I want to talk about is, and an enhancement to a feature that came with GP, I think it was GP10. It might have been GP 2010. In your vendor card, you have the option to have a separate remit to address. And so that means that if you have vendors that have want to have checks printed and also want to have EFT options as well, you could have two separate addresses for those. Or if you've got two or more physical addresses that you mail checks to, you can override these on the transaction and send it to the right place, make sure it goes to the right place. So that capability has been enhanced by allowing you to come in here to your vendors and actually change the remit to ID. Let me find one. There we go. Change this remit to ID in Edit Payables transaction. And to kind of make this real life here, you might have a vendor that you usually send a check to, and through whatever agreement you've made with them, you've got a couple invoices that you're going to send them payment electronically. You could set up their EFT and a separate remittance address, change the transactions that you're going to pay, and send them that electronic payment just by changing the remit to ID here in Edit Payables transactions for those invoices. So really enhancing your capabilities there. Something else that's really huge is you probably know that GP can track 1099 information. So I've got my vendor open here, and so here my tax type and my 1099 box are set to miscellaneous and non-employee compensation. And those will default when I process the transaction for this vendor. What's changed is the process where you can update that 1099 type and actually update transactions. So if you've got a vendor that you forgot to set as 1099, and then come to find out you need to set them as 1099, you can change their vendor card, or you can come in here and update it here, and then choose to update their transactions or update the vendor and transactions. So you can say, you know, from not a 1099 vendor, I want to change it to miscellaneous, non-employee compensation, pick your vendors, click process, and those transactions will now be marked as 1099-able. All right, so I think that's a really nice enhancement. Let's see here. Oh, this is a good one. We can now reprint remittance forms and check stubs for vendors. So let me find a good one here. Let's do this one. So I'm just here in Payables Transaction Inquiry. I'm looking at a payment, and if I drill back on that, you'll see a new button here, Recreate Check Stub. And here's the check remittance for that. And you can see it lists all of the invoices that were paid on that particular check. And then I could go ahead if I wanted to and send this off to my vendor. So that's a big one when vendors lose their remittance or don't know what they're paying, what you're paying. There's been some changes to the voiding of checks as well. So I'm just going to bring up a check here. And did I do it? Yeah, I left out a 0. Hold on here. There we go. All right. So here's a check that I have. You'll notice here there's been a new column added for reconciled. So first thing that I notice here is the dates. Though I'm in 2017, I might want to change those dates and into my current month. But I can also, if this has been reconciled, when I check that box, it's going to give me a message. It's a warning. It's not going to prevent me from voiding a reconciled payment, but it will give me a warning and remind me that I probably do not want to do that. There may be times when you need to do it, but it at least gives you that warning. The other thing that's new is when you void a check with that pays an invoice that has credit memos applied to it, it will unapply the invoice and also unapply those credit memos because you may want to reapply them in a different way. All right. So that's payables. So a couple of things in receivables here. The first one is, let's go into our sales area page here. And if we go into our receivable setup, under options, in my customer address now, I can actually, there were always 2 user-defined fields, but now I can label those fields. So in mine, I've called mine region. And so if I look at any of my customer addresses, you'll see that instead of saying user-defined one, it now says region. So this next one is really big for those of you who have multi-currency and need to do multi-currency cash receipt application. So you can see here I've got a $100 check in Australian dollars here for Boyle's Country Inns. Now, in past versions of Dynamics GP, I would have to post this and then go into Apply Documents to apply this payment to whatever invoices I needed to apply them to. Well, with the GP 2013, I can apply them normally and go ahead and just go through the normal application process. I can include them in a normal batch. It's just the normal way that I would normally apply things. So hopefully there's some sighs of relief and applause from those of you who are using multi-currency and receivables. Okay, the next area, let's go back to the deck here. The next area that we're going to look at is electronic banking. Again, some big changes here. I'm just going to go back to my home page, and I have all of my electronic banking information here in my navigation pane. This is a big one. BAI file format for electronic reconcile. So those of you who are doing overrides and manipulating your files before you actually pull them into GP, you can stop doing that and just configure a BAI file format, which is probably what your bank is sending you, and stop that process of having to make those changes. There's also some changes to the EFT file formats. So those of you who are running EFT for payables or EFT for receivables, in my example here, I'm just going to, this is a standard ACH file here. One of the new fields that have been included in this is the settlement date. So that, a lot of banks require that, and it can't be the same as the transmission date. And so it has to be a day or two later, and so now you can force that settlement date onto your file when you send it, or onto your transaction when you send that to the bank. As well, you'll see a new column here for field lengths. So you don't have to, you can just say the length of the field and it'll calculate the start and end for you. Makes it a little easier than having to count on your fingers and toes to figure out where the field locations are. So just a little bit easier way to work with your EFTs. Okay. Fixed assets. This, what I'm going to show you here is only just scratching the surface of the enhancements that have been made to fixed assets. They have really made it a focus for this release. There are a lot of new enhancements I think that you'll all be really happy with. So what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to go back to my financial ledger. And the first thing that I want to focus on is historical depreciation. So I'm going to roll down here in my reports area, and let's just do a depreciation ledger here. And I'm going to modify my option because I want to show you that I can set the date for the report to show my depreciation as of a certain date. So in my example here, I'm using depreciation as of the end of the previous fiscal year. So that's what I want to see. And remember, I'm in 2017, so it has set that date automatically to 2016. And we'll just drop this report out to the screen just so I can prove to you that it's actually giving me historical depreciation. So that's a huge enhancement, and I think something that that we've all been asking for quite a while. And it's here. The other thing that I think will make your lives a lot easier when you're using fixed assets is an option that you have to reverse your depreciation. So if you go through, you go through a depreciation process and then you realize that it was incorrect, you can reverse it. So no need to go through workarounds or anything like that. It's a simple checkbox. As well, in your posting area, when we do our fixed asset to, let me get this down here, to GL posting, you actually have the option now. I think I have a batch sitting out here. You actually have the option to review the GL posting before it actually gets to the general ledger. So, and part of that is deleting it if you need to. So if you, here's that where that reverse depreciation comes into play. You might have an issue where you need to reverse the depreciation, or you forgot to retire an asset. You want to regenerate your FA to GL posting process. You can review it, delete it, fix whatever you need to fix, and then go through and regenerate it, and then go ahead and post it. And it'll post through if you have it set that way in your setup, in your posting setup. So another huge change, and I think a really nice one. Now, those of you who are using fixed assets and using intercompany, and I'm looking for transactions again. I moved it around and now I can't find it. There it is. Are using fixed assets between two physical companies, and you might move assets between those companies. We now have the ability to transfer assets to another company, another GP company. And so here you can see I have all these other companies set up. I can just pick the company that I want to transfer it to, and then it'll go ahead and allow me to set up whatever defaults I need to set up, and actually do all of the movements and the general ledger postings for those as well. So that's a huge one. And notice you can move a whole group of assets as well. So if you've got, if you're setting up a new office and there's spinning off a company and you want to move some of your existing assets, put them in a group and move them all at once. All right. The last one here, I actually like this one a lot. When you set up a new asset, you have the option, and this is a setup option, to generate automatic asset IDs. So you don't have to think anymore about what you want to number them or name them. You can let the system do it for you. And it'll just do consecutive numbers. As well, you can see this new drop down here for purchases. So this is the same as pushing the purchases button. You can see I have 4 there, except it's a little faster. So I can say, yep, this is the one I want. It's a projector, and it's gone ahead and assigned the asset number. It's assigned the asset label as well. That's a setup option because I want those to be the same. And so just a little bit easier, a little faster to set up new assets. Okay. So let's do this. Let's move on to inventory. Big changes here. So let's take a look at some of these details. If I can remember how to navigate here. There we go. I'm going to go into my inventory area page, and I'm going to do an item transaction entry here. Those of you who use serial number tracking in Dynamics GP know that it can be a challenge when you have multiple assets or multiple serial numbers. Multiple serial numbers on a single transaction that you need to pick. And so I'm going to show you. We're going to come back to this reason code here in just a second. I'm going to show you how easy it is now to choose those serial numbers. So here I've got 4 serial numbers, and I want to add 3 of these serial numbers on a decreased transaction for this 15-inch monitor. In the past, I had to go click, 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 click. So now what I can do is, if they're all in a row, I can just hold down my Shift key and go to the last one. So it's normal Windows functions here. I'm just going to remove all of those, and we're going to do another example here. I can also hold down my Control key and pick them one at a time. So that's a huge improvement, I think, over it's going to make you much more productive to be able to pick those assets instead of having to pick them one at a time. This reason code is now going to be available to you on all inventory movement transactions. I have one set up here for my webinar example. I'm just going to drill back on this. So you can see you can pick the kind of transactions that it affects. So this is for increase and decrease transactions. Maybe it's just increase, maybe it's just decrease. You can also define an offset account for that, and then a description. So you know, you can see the transactions that would apply to this. And so this means that I'm able to report on this information. So I don't have to kind of guess or put it in the batch title or something like that. I can actually have a reason that I'm moving the transactions, and there's logic. When I'm moving my inventory, I can use logic to assign those reason codes. Okay, let's look at item maintenance here. So before, when I'm working with, let's stick with our monitor here. When I was working with inventory in the past and I needed to stop carrying an item or make it not available in lookups and that sort of thing, I pretty much had to discontinue it. Now I can mark it as inactive. And if it's marked inactive, I can't sell it. I can do returns and things like that against it, but I can't sell that inventory. And that same capability is available in the item site combination. So this relationship between the inventory item and the item site, I can make that inactive as well. So if you stop carrying a particular item at a particular site, you can make it inactive. And incidentally, inactivating is also available on the site itself. So if you physically close a site, an inventory location, you can inactivate it so things won't accidentally get moved there. What else? Oh, I need to go back to my deck for this one. Those of you who are using bins know that when you have movement between bins currently, before GP 2013, there was no history of that movement. Well, now there's been some new capabilities added to actually assign a document number to your bin transfers. So you can see here, it's assigned a document number. That means it's going to post, it's going to stay in history, and if I need to know the results in the future, I can actually go into this transfer inquiry and view the movement. So here's my transaction moving one cordless phone from the transfer bin to the auto-create bin in the North Warehouse. And here's that historical view of that transaction. Notice I could have put a reason code there as well. So I think I hear some oohs and ahs and some applause for that one. That's a big one. All right, so let's move on to purchase order. So in purchase order, those of you who are using purchase order know that when you go to close a PO, it will let you close it even if there are quantities to yet to be invoiced for that PO. Well, with GP 2013, now if here's a PO for two, I think that's a phone, yeah, 2 green phones that has been received, but it has not been invoiced. So what I can do now is if I choose to close this, it's going to ask me, it's going to give me a warning and ask me if I really want to do this because it hasn't been invoiced yet. So it'll let you do it, but it will ask you first. So that's a big change, and hopefully will help streamline some of your processes and eliminate some reconciliation and some having to track down purchase orders that have been received and not invoiced and trying to figure out what happened to them. So this next one, this one's really big. For those of you who process drop-ship purchase orders, either through the SOP to POP link or just straight purchase orders, it is, where's the one I want? 2093, there it is. You know that if you have serial numbers on those drop ships, GP does not let you track those. So a lot of times what we do is we do a fake, what we call a drop ship really isn't a drop ship. We fake it and bring it into a drop ship warehouse and then immediately fulfill it with the serial numbers on that order, that sales order. Well, in GP 2013, you now have the option, and I'm going to choose invoice the PO items here on this drop ship purchase order, to not only invoice the items but also enter the serial numbers for those items. So I'm going to click invoice here, and it's going to say what is the serial number. I'm going to, click, and then click OK. And now, if this is associated to a sales order, it is. I can see here it's linked to a sales order. It will as well apply that serial number to the linked sales order. So all I have to do is post my purchase invoice and then invoice my customer. So that's a big one here for purchasing. There's also been an enhancement to, I'm going to go into purchase order setup here, an enhancement to the way that it handles non-inventoried items. So there are, on every inventory item in Dynamics GP, you have the option to have a quantity tolerance for purchasing. So, over or short, whatever percentage it is that you deem to be appropriate for your organization. But that didn't exist for non-inventory items, and now it does. So this in purchase order setup, you need to set your tolerance, and then if we go into let's go into purchase order again, and I'm going to just bring up a PO. Let's do this last one. So this is a non-inventory item. Oh, come on. Where did it go? Maybe I deleted it and I didn't know it. So what it would do is, oh, here it is. On my options here, I can come in and try and receive this purchase order. And if I go over, so remember my tolerance was set at 10%, it's not going to allow me to receive in 120 because that's greater than my tolerance of 10%. I think it'll probably let me do 110, but it won't let me do 111 because that exceeds my tolerance. So that's for non-inventory items. And finally, there's been an enhancement to allow you to process prepayments on purchase orders. So I've got purchase order 2094 here, and I've actually recorded a prepayment amount here of $594, and you can see it's telling me here that the prepayment has not yet been processed for this. And I can look at the how this is going to be processed. I'm saying it's going to be paid by check, and so what happens now is we've got a clear segregation of duties that's going to happen, because it's not the person who's generating the purchase order that's going to be that same person that generates the check. It's actually going to be the payables person, and it's just going to be part of the normal check batch. So what I'm going to do here, I'm just going to choose Edit Check Batch, and I've got one set up here for PO Prepay. And this could be done through Select Checks. Again, I'm choosing Edit Check Batch here. There's a checkbox on the batch that says, much like your payment method is EFT or check, is this a purchasing prepayment batch? So maybe once a day, once a week, whatever. Whatever frequency you determine you run those payables for prepayment, and it will actually, now it's just a normal payable. I can go ahead and print my checks and move on as normal. And once that prepayment has been processed, then that little hash mark that was on my purchase order will go away, and I can go ahead and finish processing the PO. And of course, when it's invoiced, the amount of that payment will already be applied to the purchase order. So some good changes, I think, and some good enhancements to purchase orders in GP 2013. Just a couple of things for sales order processing for GP 2013. Let me go back to my sales area page here. Let's bring up the sales transaction. And we're going to look at order, this one, 2244. Okay. I'm going to drill back on my customer ID here, because this is really where it starts, this enhancement starts. I'm going to click on the address, and you'll see now, this is what we normally saw in the past, was this top part. And now we see some additional information here about ship to. And this allows us to put a ship to address name that might be different than the company name, the customer company name, on a particular address. And so in this case, I've just typed out over this and put deliveries at the end. So the address is American Science Museum primary address, but when I indicate this as a ship to address, I want it to say American Science Museum deliveries. Also, if there are phone numbers required for this, you can indicate those as well. You can override all of this on the sales order if you want to also. So just to kind of tie this together, if I look at the ship to address here for this order, you can see it says American Science Museum deliveries. And if I come in here, I can actually say, well, I want to print phone 1 on my sales document or whatever document it is, my order confirmation or my packing slip or whatever it is. So that extends through not only on the header information, but it also extends to the line items. So it'll pull the right invoices or the right descriptions over for those line items. Keep in mind that it will then take those addresses and combine them if you're doing a purchase order based on those. So if you have multiple lines on a sales order and you need to drop ship them to different places, it will create the POs based on those addresses. So it'll combine them together, so you don't have to do a separate PO for each line. All right. So that was what I had to show you today. Lisa, do we have any questions that came through at all?
We don't have any questions. You were getting a lot of oohs and ahs, though, in the question section.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
Oh, good. I was hoping for that. All right.
If anyone does have a question, oh, looks like we're getting some in. So
okay, good.
Let's see here.
We do have a couple minutes.
Okay. It's a question on POs.
Okay.
And all right, either I can't see the whole question or they haven't typed the rest, because it just says I have a question on POs.
Okay. Well,
Debbie, if you can hear me, if you can finish typing your question, that would be great. That's all I'm getting. Okay, wait, here comes another one. Okay. Is GP 2013 available as a hosted solution?
It is available hosted. It's also available in the cloud. So there are differences between those two, but yes, it is, and you should talk to your account manager for more information and to start that conversation if that's something that you're interested in doing. For sure.
And our PO question is here. So since we were under the impression that the PO system would allow us to do something that used to require a different build of GP, are you aware of anything like that?
I don't know any detail behind that, so I can't answer it. If you want to maybe email me some more information about the details behind that, I'd be happy to find the answer for you, but I don't. There's not enough question there for me to be able to answer it. I don't understand what you're asking.
The next one says, do we know when training material will be available for GP 2013? And is the feel primarily the same as 2010?
The feel, you can see it is pretty much the same. You know, the navigation is the same. Moving around is the same. Navigation pane, area pages, navigation lists. That's all pretty much the same. The pull-down menus, they're all the same. So that part's not difficult. I think the real training comes into looking at what those enhancements are and applying them to your organization. Some things you might not use, but some things, you know, might make your life a lot easier. So I don't know when training material will be released. I would encourage you to keep checking the E section of Partner Source or Customer Source to see when that information becomes available. I know that our consultants are prepared to do training on GP 2013 today.
The next one is, do you know of any improvements to the Integration Manager?
I do not. I have not seen anything on changes to Integration Manager. I know that there are multiple options for integration tools, so it might be that something better due to your requirements.
GP now and not be a separate purchase?
Okay, so it depends on your licensing model. With GP 2013, you have to migrate to perpetual licensing, and so it would be included.
Looking to see here, there's a few more. When will the update be released?
So GP 2013 was released on December 19th. We've done some upgrades. We were actually part of the beta, and we actually did a cloud, one of our cloud customers was part of the beta as well. So that went well, and we are expecting Service Pack 1 to be released, I would say by the end of March, hopefully sooner, but that's the date that we are looking at for Service Pack 1 right now. I know that we have successfully upgraded. I talked to a consultant yesterday, and he personally has done 4 upgrades, so it's being done, and things are going well.
And the next question is, what is perpetual licensing?
Yep. You want to talk about that, Lisa, or do you want me to?
And it's actually just how they're labeling. GP 2013 is going to be available as perpetual licensing. And perpetual licensing is there's going to be different packs that are available. And it gets pretty detailed, but depending on what version of GP you're on right now, whether you're on module-based pricing or whether you're on business-ready licensing, will depend on which of those packs that you will automatically go to. There's not a charge to go to perpetual licensing. You just have to be current on your maintenance plan. And right now we do have to request those keys. So if you are current on a plan and when you decide you do want to go to GP 2013, Socius does have to request those keys for you, because once you do go to GP 2013, you'll still have access to your to your previous keys, but you won't be able to add any functionality. So you wouldn't be able to add any additional users or any additional modules under the current version that you're on. Anything you want to add, Tammy?
No. I think, in my opinion, from a customer perspective, perpetual licensing gives you a lot more access to your information. Gives you more access through reporting and business analyzer and that sort of thing, just because those users are included.
And I don't see any other questions at this time.
Okay. Well, I'm going to go back to the deck here because I think we have some other things to say before we actually close out the meeting. So I'm going to mention some upcoming webinars that we have. We have human resources, and then payroll, and then also a fixed assets overview that we're going to be doing for GP 2013. Again, I just touched on fixed assets. There are a whole lot of changes that have come about. And I'm going to let you talk about this next one, Lisa.
Okay. Convergence is coming up next month. It is March the 18th through the 21st, and it is going to be held in New Orleans. It's Microsoft's premier event for customers. We currently, I believe, have about 30 clients that are attending and would love to have more. So if you have signed up and you did not list Socius as your VAR when you signed up, if you could shoot your account manager an email just to let us know. That way we're going to be sending out a brochure and a bunch of things as far as just to make sure people don't miss out on specific things about Convergence. So we want to make sure people are on that list. If you haven't signed up and you want to look at the agenda, you can go out to the Convergence website and view the agenda. There are tons and tons of GP sessions that are going to be available. And I believe GPUG is going to be doing the first day a lot of sessions and roundtable sessions that day. So there's just tons of information out there that's available at Convergence, and you get access to a lot of key people from Microsoft and a lot of the key ISVs as well. Then we have our Aspire West conference that is going to be held on May the 19th in San Francisco. So a lot of times we know our West Coast clients have a hard time getting to Ohio for our Aspire conference in October. So we have an event for them as well in May this year. And then Aspire 2013 is scheduled for October the 19th is the save the date. And I'm looking at that date. I've looked at so many different dates for Aspire. I'm like, is that really the right one? And it is. But you can sign up for any of these events out on our Socius website as well. And I'm just looking one last time for questions just to be sure. And I don't see any others. So with that, we thank everyone for attending. And Tammy, thank you for presenting. And hopefully we can see or have a lot of you signed up for our next Human Resources session, which will be on March 14th. Thanks, everyone.
Bye-bye.